Sure. Anjali ji, we are ready to go. Thank you. Aditi, you may begin.
Should we start?
Sure.
Okay.
The
Hello,
only thing
everyone.
that stands,
We can start. Okay. Hello,
yeah,
everyone. My name
the
is T.
only,
Ramappa. Shall I go on?
Sure. You go on.
My name is T. Ramappa. Um, I am essentially a degree in agriculture, followed by a degree in management, an MBA from the Podar Institute of Management at Jaipur. It's 1973-75 batch. We were actually the first batch, for whatever reason, 15 of us. And I started, after that, after graduation, I came back to Bangalore. I'm essentially from Karnataka, from the Malnad parts of Karnataka, from Shimoga, actually the Malnad part of Shimoga, which is Tirthalli, which is culturally closer to Chikmagalur. I came back to Bangalore and started working in the first job was in a small company called Agribusiness and Consultants, CwC, which had an office in Vasant Nagar. And, they were into coffee exports and a couple of other things. I was there for about a year or two, and then I joined the Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore, on the research, on the project side, not on the teaching side. Worked there for about 2 years. I worked on a project for HMT, which was given to IIM Bangalore. This was building a tractor plant in Rajiv Gandhi's constituency, those days, in Uttar Pradesh. And we were supposed to do the network-based monitoring system, develop a network-based monitoring system for the factory. I mean, this is based on PERT and CPM, etc. And I worked in IIM for about 2 years, I think, and then joined the Federation of Karnataka Chambers of Commerce and Industry as assistant secretary, and spent about 25, 26 years. Became deputy secretary and then became secretary, etc. Essentially. So my working life mostly was spent in chambers of commerce. FKCCI is a pretty well-known organization. It's a business lobby, an advocacy group, one of the oldest in the country. It's older than FICCI. In FKCCI, we worked on whether assistant secretary or secretary, you would handle mostly similar or same subjects, excepting that the secretary has the power to sign checks and other things, administratively. Job-wise and subject-wise, a chamber of commerce will give you enormous, diverse opportunity to handle different subjects. I handle all kinds of things, from internal trade, international trade, industry, energy, taxation sometimes, direct and indirect, two separate areas. They're separated, essentially headed by a chairman who is mostly a chartered accountant, well-known chartered accountants in the city. Some of the best we have had, like F.R. Singhvi, Krishna Swami, etc., for taxation. And many other subject areas, enterprise development. These were the subjects I handled in FKCCA. These are formal, routine type of jobs, but one can be an entrepreneurial individual in even in these jobs. Even in a government job, you can innovate. I've been asked to essentially speak about innovation, about entrepreneurship or enterprise, and then leadership. all these things are necessary in your work. And in FKCCI, we didn't just stick to the book. We did innovate a lot of things. And I remember organizing in the 1980s with the IDBI an entrepreneurship development program for women, which was a 1.5 month old, 1.5 month long development program with very, very bright women. Actually, most of them graduates and most of them married, but were interested in setting up businesses. Some were running small businesses already. This was a good program. 1.5 months with IDBI. I remember N.S. Ramaswamy, who was founder director of IAMB, spent days with us during that program. That was one milestone for FKCCI. In the 80s, I mean, this is quite some time back. From 2000 onwards, you speak of, you hear of these programs here, there, everywhere. But those days, it was very rare. But this was one thing we did for FKCCI. We also sort of, went out and organized trade fairs in Bangalore on, different sectoral trade fairs. One even on agri-food industry. These were major fairs organized those days in the palace grounds. There was no BIEC those days. Now you have a huge. So one organized these things in the palace grounds. That was another sort of innovative kind of thing. A number of delegations. I mean, we would, the FKCCI's ambit expanded, I would say, phenomenally during the time. It's not just because of me alone. There were other colleagues of mine. And we took delegations outside. I took a number of delegations, in fact. I, in fact, introduced Karnataka government to China for the first time. We took a delegation of 10 people, which I completely organized. And in 2001, accompanied by B.S. Patil. B.S. Patil was then the Principal Secretary of Industries, who later became Chief Secretary. And 9 other, apart from me, 9 or 10 other distinguished industrialists. This was more or less from Karnataka, the first visit, official delegation to China. I don't know, governments may have different, agriculture and other areas may have done some delegations, but this was an industry visit. And none of those Chinese companies, which are famous now, like Sati or Huawei, had offices in India till then. I remember we met Huawei and Sati in Shenzhen. B.S. Patil himself was quite surprised by the progress we saw in China. This was another milestone. And I took another delegation later, a government level large combined industry and government delegation headed by PGR Singh, who was the Minister of Industry in those days, and 5 or 6 IAS officers, including, I think, Lata Krishna Rao and Meera Saxena. And there was another IAS officer, or Industry's Principal Secretary, who is dead now. And 3-4 others, and many industrialists, including R.N. Shetty, Chinnaswamy Raju, and local who was 70 and above those days, Malpani. This was another landmark. And apart from this, we had many other delegations, visiting foreign countries and many under the United Nations and other things. We also took a women's delegation in 1986 to Southeast Asia. We went to Indonesia, we went to Singapore, and we went to Malaysia. I remember in Indonesia, we organized, those days, you see, communication was not like it is now. One had to, there was no internet. One had to correspond otherwise using the normal postal thing and, telex and whatever was there. Fax and telex, I think, those days. We did organize meetings with Indonesia, with major Indonesian organizations. There's a ladies, women entrepreneurs organization, if I remember correctly, called CwC. And there's something like FICI in Indonesia, similar to FICI, which was, I think, called Ren. These are acronyms. Ren is Indonesian, Bahasa. So this was another milestone. And
Ramappa, we had some questions for you. Why don't we put our questions one by one and you answer them? Okay.
we can do that. I mean,
Yeah, sure.
and then I haven't spoken about BCIC, where I was Secretary General, and other things. I mean, we can go by your questions. There's absolutely no problem. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
The only thing that stands between you and your dream is the will to try and the belief that it's actually possible. It's actually a beautiful quote by Mr. Joel Brown. So, with this quote, I would like to begin our show named Conversation with Consultants with episode 23 of our guest talk series. Good evening, everyone. I'm P. Shravan Kumar, the founder of SK Associates and Group, and your host for today's talk show.
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Aditi Jain, and your host for today's talk show and Strategic Alliance Advisor of SK Associates and Group. So, before we begin our talk show, let me briefly introduce SK Associates and Group to you. We are an ISO certified management consulting firm registered under the MSMED Act 2006 with the Government of India. Our mission is to provide consulting services to student entrepreneurs globally, covering areas such as compliance, operation, marketing, research and development, human capital, strategy, and operation. Our passion lies in helping these budding entrepreneurs bring their dreams to life and contribute to global economic growth.
Entrepreneurship, Aditi, is a catalyst for change and innovation. It's a powerful force that can reshape industries, transform lives, and make the world a better place. We are actually committed to supporting these student entrepreneurs on their journey, equipping them with the tools, knowledge, and networks they need to succeed.
Now, before we begin our show, let's take a moment to introduce our guest for today. It gives us immense pleasure to welcome Mr. Ramappa, business consultant, to this special event. We are truly honored by your presence today, and we are thrilled to have you share this momentous occasion with us. So, welcome, Mr. Ramappa.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So, Ramappa ji, can you tell us a bit about your early career and how did you get started in the trade and industry sector exactly?
I joined FKCCI by accident. I might have joined a company, but there were not so many companies those days. But this was quite an accident. I joined them and I stuck around. I didn't move out, though I had a couple of job offers by companies. I had to be in Bangalore. That was a constraint for me at that point in time. I joined and continued with the FKCCI. I mean, these were, Chamber of Commerce. Normal jobs, these are not high flying in that sense. Though they give you an opportunity, these days these jobs have become high flying. And this is how I joined. And, I continued in the Chamber of Commerce, working in different areas. As I mentioned, I ended up as secretary in the FKCCI. Then became Secretary General of BCIC. BCIC is Bangalore Chamber of Industry and Commerce, one of the most prominent industry chambers in Karnataka and in the country. I was Secretary General there. Worked in different areas of industrial, policies, industrial regulations, doing business. Enterprise development, taxation areas, and industry's concern for energy, issues that industry had with the supply of energy, essentially electrical energy, and things like that, and also international trade, internal trade. There were problems with internal trade. International trade had many problems those days before India opened up. In 1991. China opened in 1978. All these areas, I mean, I had at some point or the other worked in all those areas. And I also, like I mentioned earlier, took a lot of delegations, delegations abroad. and attended a lot of conferences, for instance, and ITC. ITC is International Trade Center, a part of the UN organization system. In Munich once, and another time in Netherlands, in Rotterdam, for about a month. Then I spent a month in Japan, in the Osaka Chamber of Commerce and Industry. In the 90s, I mean, this is what one did. Apart from the chamber experience, once I sort of superannuated, I worked for ADB, worked for a project on Bangalore's cluster development. This was an industry project aided by the ADB. Unfortunately, it had to be shelved halfway, because the government's whatever policy. But then we did work on that. I was the investment climate expert on that ADB project. It was headed by international consultants, essentially English consultants. We did a lot of work. We produced the first preliminary report, interim report, which is a good report. I mean, I think the government can even now look at the recommendations made there. And industrial climate expert meant a whole lot of analyzing and advising on a whole lot of issues concerning industry and investments into the state. And this gave me a considerable exposure and opportunity to visit the policy areas again. And I've later worked in CASIA, as principal officer, which is essentially an MSME domain, for about 5-6 years in CASIA. So this is essentially my work experience, and background. Educationally, I'm a BSc in agriculture and then an MBA.
Great. So, Mr. Ramappa ji, what motivated you to pursue a degree in agricultural sciences, and how has that influenced your career?
No, this was this. I must be honest with you. I mean, this is this was in the 60s, late 60s, mid to late 60s, 70s, 67, 68, I think. If one didn't get you, it depended on your marks in your pre-university. I think we were the last one-year PUC batch in Karnataka from the Mysore University. I had about, I think, 60+% marks in chemistry, botany, and zoology. And you either had an option to do medicine. My marks were not enough for medicine, so I had to join agriculture. It was not so much a thought out sort of journey, but then no regrets. Agriculture is a great course actually, and the college I attended is one of the finest colleges in the country. Same UAS, Dharwad. There were only 2 campuses those days, one in Bangalore, one in Dharwad. Now you have a dozen schools everywhere in the state. This is how I did agriculture. Management again, accidentally. Probably I would have loved doing history or philosophy. I must tell you this because of one's own background and things like that. Sometimes you're not able to choose what you want to do. I ended up doing management, and I hadn't applied after agriculture. For some reason, I did not apply. I had applied in. I had got a form from IIM Ahmedabad, but I did not apply. But then I had no place to go. It was September. And somebody said Jaipur is, because Pilani integrated their course. They had a 2-year MBA, but they integrated it and made it a 5-year program in 1973, I think. And so Podars, under Rajasthan University, I think they helped in setting up a management school, a small management school to begin with. And this started a little late than the normal academic year. I think this was in September. I had some time to make an application. I made an application. I went there and sorry, I had to take the test and all that. You had written test, you had a group discussion, you had and then an interview process. I somehow got through, and then I ended up doing a management degree.
Rampaji,
Anyway,
how did
yeah.
your MBA exactly complement your background in agricultural
So
sciences?
MBA, gives you a certain mental discipline, a certain mental framework, and agriculture is great enterprise. Agriculture can be a great enterprise. It's not just cultivating a few acres of farm. Agriculture and management can go together very well. In fact, agriculture needs management techniques. Adaptation of technology, for instance, adopting those management tools which help you optimize or maximize your whatever your product or your profits. And this they complement very well, excepting that I did not choose an agriculture oriented management career. I ended up in a chamber of commerce. Those are perfectly, complementary, and they marry each other very well, like engineering and management. Agriculture management is quite an area which is very very sort of synergy wise.
So, could you share some of the key roles and responsibilities you had as Secretary of FKCCI?
Say it again. Trade.
Share some of the key roles and responsibilities you had as a Secretary of FKCCI.
Oh, as Secretary of FKCCI, you would this is an independent. Even if you were an assistant secretary, you handle everything independently. You have, for instance, an assistant secretary has a personal secretary. Those days, now you don't have personal secretaries. In most organizations, everybody uses the laptop, and yeah. But we had, each one of us had a personal secretary, and you were allotted different subjects. For instance, to begin with, I was allotted, I think, half a dozen or dozens, more than half a dozen subjects when I joined as assistant secretary, including internal trade. One, I think, direct or indirect taxation. One of them, I think, commercial taxes, which is indirect taxes. And then energy. Energy is one area where I worked extensively. Those days, power was a big issue. Pricing of power for industry, supply of power for industry, and transmission and distribution systems and the losses. The continuous supply of power was a problem. Stability of power supply was a problem. There used to be every now and then meetings with government. As assistant secretary, you're supposed to work with government. You organize meetings with the highest in government, including the chief minister. Even as an assistant secretary, you would have access, apart from the secretaries in government and other ministers. With the central government, I have had occasion to invite and interact with all kinds, including Chidambaram, Dr. Manmohan Singh, a whole lot of P.N. Huxer, downwards, because most of them, many of them were in charge of ministries like commerce and industry, finance, or similar industry-related ministries. So you would have responsibilities in terms of organizing those meetings, taking care of those meetings, preparing position papers if it's required to be done, including speeches for the president on a particular subject, because you're an expert, you're supposed to be an expert on the subject that you have. And then you would follow up on those meetings, on the decisions taken in those meetings, or whatever, So this continues with every area that you're supposed to handle.
That was great hearing to that response. However,
Yeah.
what are some of the significant challenges that you might have faced while working as a Secretary General of BCIC?
Oh, BCIC. There were many challenges because, many challenges. I mean, challenges were there even in the FKCCI. BCIC, you would have similar challenges, but on a greater scale, because it's industry body. FKCCI, trade and industry, you have a certain dominance of trade in FKCCI, whereas in BCIC it is completely industry. You would deal with professional managers there. That was a bit of a challenge. I mean, there was a difference between professional managers running an industry and the family type of business, run by an entrepreneur, running a family business and things like that. You would have to, get used to that. I had no problem in getting used to that because I knew BCIC even earlier. I had worked with BCIC and CII and energy. In fact, on energy, we were working together. There was a united approach to problems of energy with respect to government. So, in fact, I used to be in charge of that, both for CII, FKCCI, and BCIC. There were other challenges externally, because India had, those were the days, initial years of reforms, and you had challenges in for instance, with GST, introduction of GST. In FKCCI, I remember we had challenges with the introduction of VAT. Many traders were opposed to VAT initially, so one had to really navigate, the course very carefully. I mean, strike a balance between what is best for the state and the country macroeconomically and what is good for trade and industry. There were such challenges, and there were many others. For instance, Bangalore International Airport. We worked very hard to get that going initial years. I remember organizing meetings one after the other because there was a problem in the middle of the development of the airport. Things had become slowed. That was we had to get people together. The airports authority, the government, central government authorities, state government, industries department, and industry, and to smoothen things out. Otherwise, it is similar. I mean, the challenges were similar. It's only a matter of degree, degree, and like I said, between approach by a professional manager vis-a-vis a traditional, family-owned business manager.
Great. So, how did your work at FKCCI and BCIC contribute to the development of trade and industry in your region?
Oh, it is. I cannot make tall claims, but I must tell you that we made enormous contribution in terms of getting regulatory issues smoothened out, smoothing out the single, what they now call ease of doing business. We did hell of a lot of work in those areas. In FKCCI, for instance, I remember when Krishna became chief minister, we gave him a roadmap, if you like it. I don't know, that paper would seem to be missing, which the paper was written by me, I must admit it, and presented to Krishna at that meeting. There was a person called Vishwanathan. I think N. Vishwanathan, who was industry secretary those days. He was quite, appreciative of the paper. And what you now see, for instance, the industrial corridor from Bangalore towards Belgaum. Now you see Tumkur and, all along Hubli, Belgaum. You have industries being developed. We had proposed, this road was called NH4 those days, National Highway 4. We had proposed that government, much before even government spoke about it, to make this corridor, real industry corridor. So there were many things like that. Like I said, taking a delegation to China, taking a women's delegation to Southeast Asia. These were all pioneering efforts. And in fact, I don't know if any other chamber in India, including the national chambers, had taken women's delegation in 1986 or earlier. Later, they had their own women's organizations, but 86 it was FKCCI which took those delegations, and I organized that delegation, including the meetings in Indonesia, Malaysia, and Singapore. So this was another key development, I would say, because women include women. I remember women like Kiran Mazumdar Shah were when we formed a women's committee, women entrepreneurs committee in FKCCA. Kiran used to be a regular there. Madhura Chhatrapati, Kiran Mazumdar Shah. Now you have many, of course, dozens of them. Kiran, of course, later became a big success, a great industry. So all these people initially had Smita Shetty of Forest Engineering. All of them were part of, FKCCI's women's wing, and this is what one did in those years.
Since you're talking about Project Ramappa Ji, which was your most memorable project that you have been a part of during your career?
Okay. The ADB one is quite memorable. Because I made a lot of contribution. I have that report with you. I can send you a soft copy, probably, if I have it in my system. That report, is something which I'm proud of. I mean, it was not my, my contribution alone. There were dozens of others. But then I did make considerable amount of contribution. That was one thing. The women's delegation and that 1.5 months on enterprise development program we organized with IDBI, and introducing China to to Karnataka, to in that sense to India, and there are many others. I did a social project those days on family welfare. For industrial family, health and maternal and child health care for industrial workers, which was funded by the ILO and the government of India, which was completely handled by me. This was in the 80s. Incidentally, as an aside, I completely handled the lecture by, Rajiv Gandhi Memorial Lecture in Bangalore, addressed by Margaret Thatcher. That meeting, which was organized, I think, in Western Hotel, was completely organized by me. So, and in BCIC we did many things, but BCIC was a short stint. I was there for about 5 years, but then I did stabilize the chamber working of that organization, and I'm happy with with the growth and things like that. In fact, I got 2 sites, one after the. I mean, a site which was which they wanted the BCIC cleared by the BDA. Those days they didn't take that site. It's another matter because they, for whatever reason. These were some of the things which I remember. I mean, there were many things actually. I may not have mentioned everything. There could be others. In fact, if I go back in my memory and speak about them.
Thank you for sharing. So, how did you see the role of trade associations evolving in the current global economic climate?
How do I
See the
see?
role of trade See the role of trade associations evolving in the current global economic climate.
Well, they have, they have always been extremely critical in, because these are the organizations which link industry and trade with government and international, organizations. These are, in a way, middlemen, but good middlemen in the sense you need somebody, to. This is like a router, they have. These provide a platform for industry to come and air their ideas, air their problems, exchange information. Industry individually cannot do these things, however big you are. I mean, if you're big, you can lobby and you can, have the money power, you could do that. You could meet a minister, but then you need industry in general, particularly MSMEs, need a platform for exchange of, they have huge amounts of problems. And what is best than a chamber of commerce, in solving, addressing those problems? Chambers are powerful organizations. They can talk to anybody. You can, in fact, chambers issue certificates of origin. Chambers issue visa recommendation letters to business travelers. These carry a lot of weight. In fact, internationally, many times foreign governments and institutions rely more on chamber than local governments. Let me tell you this, because they have more trust in the chambers, because they consider them as professional organizations. Some of which really are professional. There is a certain element of, but otherwise these are organizations which make a lot of contribution, and bring new ideas to the notice of the government, pose problems to the government, problems facing industry and trade. This is where the pain is, and the guys who undergo these things can only tell the government. I mean, this is how it works actually. The role of chambers of commerce is enormous if they are properly organized and allowed to, to function. But there are constraints, but even then, yeah.
How do you see the role of trade associations, fostering industry growth? And would you like to discuss any specific strategies that basically you must have seen over your 35 years of career that have been
Yeah,
particularly effective in fostering industry growth?
trade associations.
Yeah.
You mean specific trade associations? But for instance,
Yeah,
there is
like
auto.
fostering growth in trade associations. Are there any specific business strategies that have been common in doing this?
They sometimes they do not formulate a strategy in a very formal sense, but they do adopt strategies sometimes instinctively. Meaning they know by experience how to tackle a certain problem. For instance, if there is, let us say that Pinya lacks certain infrastructure, in terms of whatever, in terms of roads, in terms of communications, in terms of logistics. These associations can tackle these things very effectively, and then investments will flow into the country. Like I said, these associations are a bridge between the country and foreign businesses. When foreign businessmen come, they come to the Chamber of Commerce. They don't go to government straight. I remember taking a number of delegations to Infosys in the initial years when nobody had heard of Infosys. I had taken, billion-dollar Japanese companies to visit Infosys, to visit many other, companies in Bangalore. I remember after India opened up, we handled an American delegation called Russell 2020. This is a huge pension funds group which handles huge pension funds which invest in different countries. We took them around I remember to BPL, to Grindwell Norton, to many other industries in Kenya. There is a lot of things that are done in attracting investments, and most foreign delegations go through chambers of commerce. They also use them as advocacy groups and lobby groups and whatever. In fact, I took even I must tell you this as an aside. I took one of the very distinguished Pakistan High Commissioners in New Delhi to Infosys during the last cricket match of Imran Khan in Bangalore. That match, of course, Pakistan beat India. I took the delegation to Infosys, and Narayan Mukti received Ambassador Jahangir Kazi, and we gave him lunch, spent 2.5 hours. So this promotes, and you promote not only trade and investment. Sometimes you also promote good relations between countries if you are working, in a proper direction.
Exactly. So, what skills do you believe are essential for someone in a leadership role within trade associations?
What is?
What
Can you
skills
repeat?
do you believe are essential for someone in a leadership role within trade associations?
Oh, leadership is you should be able to take people together. Meaning, you should be approachable, friendly. I don't mean indecisive. Friendly doesn't mean that you accept nonsense, but
Good interpersonal skills, in short, right?
absolutely, be firm but be friendly. Being able to meet and and exchange ideas and views with different. There'll be 100 different viewpoints, and be able to arrive at a consensus, strike a consensus, take people together. These are things that you need. I mean, any leader would need that. A leader is much more than a manager. A manager is technically somebody who is structurally, but a leader is very different because he's individual. I think it is done by example, by your personality, your integrity, how honest you are, what you do, and how you sort of keep your word. And these are some of the things that a leader should have, and living by example, not really speeches and propositions, but real concrete examples. And,
Ramappa ji, I had a question.
yeah,
Since you have been into this industry since 1980s and 70s, and in 1991 we saw a big economic change
yeah,
when Prime Minister Manmohan
that's the
Singh ji
one.
actually introduced the LPG formula: liberalization, privatization, and globalization. So my
Mm.
question is that what impact has globalization had on local trade and industry after that?
Local trade, very little. Trade was not completely opened up in 91. I mean, it took a lot of time. Even for international trade to open up, it took years. 91, they liberalized industrial policy, took out some of those severe restrictions, and deregulated industry, deregulated trade to a certain extent, but not completely. But it did have an impact in the sense internal trade. It didn't really have immediately too much of impact. Yeah, but like you see now, what you see in terms of, for instance, if you take consumer goods or food items, you do have foreign brands and foreign, including apples and things like that, being marketed in Bangalore. But then it's not such a major problem. But then industry initially had a problem. I remember Rahul Bajaj forming a group in Bombay, I think it was called the Bombay Group or something, who were initially opposed to outright liberalization. They didn't want India to completely, liberalize, meaning crash the customs duties, bring them down to international level, European levels and things like that. They were worried that manufacturers here would suffer initially. But I think later it helped in the sense of technology collaborations, opening up foreign markets to your products. And investments coming into the country, direct investment, foreign direct investment was required in many areas, including technology transfer and things like that. So initially there were hiccups, but then I think it was quite a measured, well thought out move. And India was the only country left in the world those days. China opened up in 1978. In Asia, this is the largest economy. So India could not wait for too long because we were a restricted, protected market. This was overall, this was a good development for India and the world actually, because the Indian market is huge. Now you realize there are always ups and downs. Many industries die. If you cannot compete, you will simply disappear. And then of course for that you need to have a level playing field and proper policies, support for industry, which they have, I think, been fairly doing well.
Exactly, very well said. So, what are your thoughts on the current state of agricultural trade and where do you see it heading?
Well, agricultural trade is a very complex area. You have restrictions everywhere. It's not just in India. Only few items are allowed to be imported in any country. It's not just in India. Even in Europe, there are restrictions. In America, there are restrictions. Farming is an area which is highly protected for its own reasons because it's a very, very complex area. So agriculture trade will have to be selectively open. Farmers are not. It's not like industry in that sense. Mechanical engineering or things like that. Agriculture is the size of the farms. Levels of farming income, education level of farmers, being able to understand markets and things like that. So that is a very complex area. I don't think I can, answer those questions in so many words. Actually, it is an area which will not be easily accessed anywhere, not just in India. Anywhere. I mean, there is no such free market in agriculture. There are always restrictions in any country in agriculture.
Rampaji, like we have observed multiple times that government bodies and trade associations do collaborate for certain campaigns or projects. So, like, how important is this collaboration for both of them? And like, could you give us a case study, like an example wherein government and trade association did collaborate?
It's quite important actually. In BCIC, I forgot to mention skill development was an area which came into prominence in 2006, 2005, and BCIC did when I was there as Secretary General, we did a lot of work in skill development area. In fact, Government of India was keenly working with us. I remember I and the CII chief, then I forget his name, he headed an IT company here. We when the World Bank team came, we went and pledged industry support to them in skill area. That is how the World Bank aid came to Government of India. In the sense, I mean, they wanted to be convinced that industry was on the page with the government and things like that. So that was a great, if you like, public-private collaboration in skilling areas. And now you have many such examples. They involve trade bodies. Then it was a little not so so much in vogue, but then we did collaborate with government in skill areas. We did a lot of work with government of Karnataka here, and also government of India. Yeah.
Okay, that's actually excellent. Aditya?
So, what advice would you give to young professionals aspiring to work in trade and industry sectors?
Or to work in trade and industry sector.
Yes, any advice?
But, they must find their feet, first of all, in the sense, like any other work. You do your work well, work hard, be dynamic, be sort of open to ideas, and develop skills, new skills, be technology savvy. Now, of course, everyone is technology, tech savvy. Unlike us, unlike me, for instance. That is what it is. If it is for people you're wanting to find work, do whatever job you want to do, or with the area that you specialize in, do it well. Working hard, to your everything into the thing that you job you do is what is required actually, and be honest. These are simple things. I don't think there is any magic in any job, for that matter. You need to do, work hard. You need to know the area of your work and do it well and do it honestly. That's it.
Would you like to share some leadership lessons from your 35 years of experience with all of us, Ramappa?
Leadership lessons. Leadership is about moving forward, about leading people. Being able to convince people of what you do, what is required to be done, taking them together, convincing them. Taking different opinions and arriving at consensus. And that's it. And living by example. And a leader must be able to do things himself. So he must be prepared to soil his hands. I think that is the first lesson for any leader. You must be prepared to soil your hands.
So, how do you foster innovation within traditional industries?
Innovation. How do you foster? Innovation can come anywhere. Even a small eatery can innovate in terms of how you structure what you do, how you serve. I don't know if you have seen some very successful new eateries in Bangalore. For instance, there is an eatery called Y2 Coffee. If you have heard of them or if you've noticed them. I remember they started in Vijayanagar. I've been watching them for now, I think, about 10 years. They did excellent job, serving limited number of items, doing them well, maintaining quality, their service. And you can shut your eyes and go and eat in that place, and they're very clean and hygienic. It applies to any other industry. I'm talking of a restaurant as an example. It can be anyone. Innovation is something which you do. You find newer ways of doing it, better ways of doing things, more cost-effective ways of doing things, and things like that. Even in traditional business or industry you can innovate. There is no industry where you cannot, really innovate, depending on how one sort of takes things and moves forward.
The last question of the day, Ramappa. How
Yeah.
do trade associations like FKCCI and BCIC contribute to policy making processes?
Oh, they're consulted regularly by governments. If government is to make a law on industry, let us say change anything, make amendments, they always send you the draft and hear your views. You contribute by making suggestions, altering things, telling them what is best. Not that they will accept everything, but then you have an opportunity to represent industry and trade. They will have to do that. Government cannot do it, on its own. If they do not hear industry's views, they cannot really make good policies. So government regularly consults the industry. When they renew the industrial policy, they take you into confidence. I mean, it's a regular sort of a thing that they do, and there's no way they can avoid doing that, because industry is the one who are really working in the field and implementing certain government policy. So they consult, and we have every opportunity to make our suggestions and tell them what is best and things like that. Yeah.
So, looking back at your career, what are you most proud of achieving?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I don't think I can give an answer to that, but I can tell you that whatever I did, I tried to do my best. In the sense, in difficult circumstances, in whatever circumstances, never shirked a responsibility. I have met all kinds of people, from the lowliest to the highest, to prime ministers and senators and ambassadors, and dozens of chief ministers, governors in the state, and things like that. And I only did. It is just because you have a job which requires those meetings, you meet them, and you don't have to take it as a great achievement, of yourself. But I feel that I did whatever I did as honestly as possible. One cannot be absolutely sure of being honest, but then to a great extent, I mean, that's something which I carry. And I did a lot of. I did help a lot of industry, lot of whether it is recommendation of a visa and things like that. Plenty of people. I mean, I'm sure people remember. That's something which I did as part of my job. Yeah.
Moving ahead, we would like to express our sincere gratitude to Mr. Ramappa, business consultant and former secretary of multiple trade associations, for being our guest for today's
Thank you very much.
It helped to make it a success. Thank you for
Thank
providing insight into your inspirational journey.
Thank you very much. Thanks everyone. Thanks for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, sir.
I'm thankful to you. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.